Hello, my name is Thomas Schwingle, and I am a professional cinematographer based in Los Angeles. I'm making this 6-part series of videos for freelance filmmakers, creative gig workers, and small film businesses, figuring out the nuances of contract work versus being a short-term employee is confusing. Taxes are complicated. Invoicing and dealing with contracts from a studio can be intimidating. This is not legal advice or professional tax advice. Please speak with a lawyer if you need specific consultation, and please do your own due diligence. My opinions and tips are not the only way to structure your plans. However, after many years of running my cinematography trade across multiple states, I've learned a lot and often get asked by others for input. I'm sharing what I know because I haven't seen a lot of other videos that do it. This is video number 3 of 6 in this series. In the previous video, I talked about protecting yourself by setting up an LLC and other possible business structures. You've got the LLC, the cool business name, and you have banking set up. At this point, the basics are covered. Even though you now have the legal shield of the LLC, Little Pumpkin Spice is safe from being taken in a lawsuit, does it mean you are covered in case of an accident on set? Well, not necessarily. Insurance is the next step. Just like an auto policy, business insurance, and some of the other policies I'll mention, are safety nets so that you aren't financially on the hook for an accident. Ever been in a car wreck? Your auto insurance, depending on your policy, handles the cost of repairs, injuries to other parties, tow trucks, etc. While the LLC may be a shield for your personal assets, the LLC still could be on the financial hook to resolve an accident. In the first video, I talked about how some production companies make you sign contracts that stipulate that you are in charge of any losses incurred by you, your own injury, the damage of your own gear, even if you damage a location. This gets into a bit of a battle between the production's own insurance and the insurance you should be carrying to protect yourself. In the first video, I explained how when you are hired as an employee, a time card job, you have certain protections and rights that are mandated by law. Unemployment coverage, injury coverage, certain standards for the workplace, etc. On a contract job, the production hiring you may try to offload some of the burden of liability onto you. This is especially true if you're working as your own small production company. You are the one showing up with lights and camera, doing the edit, making the final product, etc. In that one-person machine case, you are very nearly the production company yourself. There are 2 types of insurance that apply here. Most productions, a set with a gathering of crew and rented equipment, perhaps on a location, should have production insurance. You might be familiar with this if you've ever made your own short film, music video, or some project where you had to secure equipment, locations, or particular resources. The rental house with the RE camera you want to use isn't going to let you take the camera out the front door for this weekend's heavy metal music video unless you have adequate production insurance. They need to know that the $250,000 camera package is covered. The grip house won't let you drive that grip van away unless you have production insurance. Typically, the production company that is organizing the project, or the studio, is the one who has the beefy policy to cover these assets. If you've ever done your own short film, you've perhaps had to rent a policy like this for the duration of the project. It's not cheap. Now, if you're a one-person company and you're doing any kind of rental of expensive equipment or renting vehicles or shooting in high-end locations, you may already know you need to have a policy like this. One of your vendors may have alerted you to this, and your small production company has already purchased the policy you need in order to operate in the circles that you do. Production insurance is hard to sneak around, especially when dealing with vendors. This type of policy, the production insurance policy, is not the one I'm going to discuss for the single-member LLC. If you are a solo crew person, or just someone that takes on small shoots where all of your personal equipment fits in your own vehicle, then you are looking at business insurance, often called a business owner's policy. There are many places to shop for this, and chances are if you have auto insurance, your provider might have a wing of the company that does business insurance. That's where I got started. My first auto insurer, Allstate, also provided business owners policies, and I was able to easily set it up through my agent. Shop around. Just like when you pick what you want in your auto insurance policy, you can generally pick items that you want in your business owner's policy. Since you are sometimes getting asked to take on risk with productions where they are bringing you on as an independent contractor, you want to cover yourself where you could likely get in trouble if something goes wrong. Comprehensive liability is a huge one. It covers any injuries or damage that might affect other people you are working with. If you accidentally whack someone with a C-stand or drop a light out of the grip truck and onto an actor's car, that would cover it. Property coverage is for any locations you might rent for photo shoots. Medical payment coverage is for if someone slips on a wet floor at your studio. If you do a lot of in-house work directly for clients, like editing videos for a brand, you may want to consider errors and omissions insurance as an added protection. If you royally screw up a delivered edit and the client decides to come at you, errors and omissions protects your business from claims by clients for negligence, malpractice, errors, or omissions you allegedly made while providing a professional service. There are policies for cybersecurity if you do a lot of online data with clients. You should pick coverages that fit your business model. I haven't mentioned your personal equipment yet, and that's because it is a separate policy, especially if it doesn't stay in one place. You can potentially cover equipment through a business owner's policy if it remains housed at one location. If it goes with you, then maybe not. If you've ever had stuff stolen from inside your car, you may have learned the hard way that property inside your car isn't typically covered by auto insurance. The car is covered, and any mistake you make with the car is covered, but property inside often is not. The same can be true with a basic business owner's policy. You are generally covering liability and mistakes. Replacing lost or damaged items is a separate situation. There are two ways to deal with equipment you own if the business owner's policy doesn't cover it. If you don't own a lot of expensive equipment, say you have a small still camera kit that you use or just a handful of tools you bring to set, you can probably cover these under your renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance policy. You should definitely own a policy for where you live, by the way, but today I'm talking about your LLC. If you own specialty electronics like a still camera or computer equipment for your job, you may need to add it to the renter's or homeowner's policy under a special coverage. These are usually called scheduled items or scheduled personal property, and it's an added coverage for special items you may own that aren't typically found in the average home. But make sure it is still covered when away from the home. However, if you own a lot of equipment or expensive equipment that you just can't pick up at the local Best Buy, lights, a cinema camera, a sound mixing kit, then we're talking about getting something called inland marine. It's a funny name, but it comes from the earliest insurance policies where items were transported at sea and you could buy ocean marine insurance to cover the loss of shipped items, as in literally shipped on a ship. For items moving across land, it became known as inland marine. And think of floating when you think of the name. The coverage floats with your equipment wherever it goes, although international travel may have extra stipulations. I have an inland marine policy, and it covers my personal equipment. If my lens is stolen, if my light breaks, if there is a set fire and my light meter burns up, it's covered. Granted, like all insurance policies, it may not be worth filing the claim if the damaged items are below the deductible. An inland marine policy only covers your property that you listed with the insurance company when you bought the policy. If you're renting property, then you're back to that production insurance situation, or perhaps adding some kind of rented equipment addendum to one of these aforementioned policies. And if you acquire new, expensive equipment, you may have to update your policy to reflect it. It would suck to have your car go over the edge of a cliff with all your new lights inside, but you hadn't updated the policy in a couple years and only like 60% of the value was covered. Rest in peace, Titan tubes. Keep in mind, if you rent out your expensive equipment, as in you're not the one using the camera on your own production, a different production is using it outside of your supervision, then it is probably not covered under any of these policies. Same with the homeowner's or renter's insurance policy. If the scheduled equipment is being used in business situations, the companies may decline to cover it in an incident. Check the fine print. Okay, so we've covered our butts for any mistakes, we've covered our equipment. What happens if you get hurt? Well, guess what? We may have to look at another policy. Generally speaking, if you are on a set as a contractor and the studio hiring you has already decided that they aren't helping you out if you get hurt, then you are likely relying on your own health insurance to cover yourself. Workers' comp, which is generally required to be in place when you are hired as an employee on a job, is really only a policy that can be purchased by an LLC or company that has at least one employee, 2 people total or more. Since we've been talking about being a single-member LLC, workers' compensation coverage does not apply. If you're worried about the possibility of an injury at work that could cause you to be out of work for months, then we're thinking about getting disability insurance. It's really something to consider for yourself. If you are a documentary filmmaker and you only ever get hired as a contractor and your specialty is sports, as in you often get hired to follow athletes around at training and you shoot footage of live events, is there a possibility that you could fall and break your leg while filming? Have you had close calls before? Your medical insurance will cover the cost of a hospital visit and aftercare. Well, in the US, I guess it really depends on what you have for coverage. But if you are out of work for 5 months with a healing leg, can you last that long financially? Disability insurance is there to provide you some income while you're out of work with an injury. Depending on the policy, it can cover anywhere from 40 to 80% of the income you were making when you signed up for the policy. So says the internet AI when I searched this. Keep in mind, each policy is different and some may only kick in 60 to 90 days after the injury. So there's still a scenario where you have to pay the bills using your savings for the first 3 months after getting injured before you start receiving coverage. Also, you should sign up for disability when you are younger, but after you've had really good earnings for a year or two. The insurer is going to base the coverage on your recent tax returns and your current health. Depending on the company, you can lock in some good coverage while you're still young and presumably healthy. I do have disability insurance, and while I've never needed it, I've kept it since locking in a good rate in my mid-20s. So what are all of these policies going to cost? It's hard for me to give you good ranges. You'll have to ask the internet. Insurance underwriting is a murky, calculated, nerdy world where they look at tables, charts, probabilities. In my case, my business owner's policy is a few hundred for the year. I don't own a ton of expensive equipment, so my inland marine policy is just a couple hundred for the year. And my disability policy is the most, arriving just above $500 for the year. So this is around $1,000 a year for all of these coverages. Keeping in mind that companies can re-rate things, same as how your auto insurance tends to fluctuate. Let's be clear, I'm going above and beyond what your average young artist is going to do. I have yet to talk to a peer who has a disability insurance policy. But I've seen set accidents and have had friends in them, and I already worry about making enough money each year. I don't want an injury to wreck me. I know 2 camera operators who've had their backs fail them, and it wasn't even from some specific event. They simply tweaked themselves after too many long days of carrying a camera and had to step away for a few months to heal back pain, and in one case, one guy had to have a full surgery. Do what is best for you and shop around for what fits. Go to insurance review sites and ask others who might also have policies. Lastly, let's briefly talk about contracts. If any of the work you do is going to end up in a public space and it is generally commercial in nature, think advertising, or you're making money for your business or for another business, then you should have a few basic contracts on hand. An image release is a contract that you'd give to someone who's going to appear in a commercial or promotional project, and the contract is giving permission to use the image or likeness of the person you are capturing. It is a way to acknowledge that the person in the video or photo is doing so consensually, and there might also be payment terms or time limit terms included in the paperwork. A location release is the same idea except for a place, especially recognizable locations. I talked in previous videos about how studios may make you sign a contract to limit their liability in your professional relationship. Well, you might need to consider the reverse. If you're putting together a small production, you may want to make your crew or talent sign a brief contract that defines the relationship between you and them. If you're not a full production utilizing production insurance, or you're not using payroll, you may need to stipulate terms with the crew you bring on board for your production. I've done this when I've directed my own small music videos. I might have a 1 or 2 page contract that stipulates what I am paying, hours of work, overtime, responsibilities, meal schedule, and any liabilities my LLC will or will not be attached to. I know I stated I don't like these situations when studios do it, but if I'm asking a handful of friends to come shoot a small passion project out in the woods with me, I need to make sure my LLC is operating safely and clearly, even though they might all be my friends. And again, we must be sure to operate legally in the state where you are working. You can now set up your own payroll service online through a few different companies, and they will handle the taxes and withholdings and issue checks for you. Also, if you contract work with a client, you may want to define terms or you could get locked into mission creep. You may want to state how many versions of an edit you will do, how many times they can give notes on an edit, how much payment you expect upfront for material costs, when the final payment is due to you. You may also want to define who owns the material and where each party can use it, and for how long. Contracts are annoying, but we live in a lawsuit-happy society, and if the big companies are making you do it, you should also have contracts standing by to cover your own small projects. Again, these should be drafted with the help of a lawyer if possible. In the next video, I'll talk about invoicing, getting paid, and how to save money. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. There are more in this series. They're coming down the pipe. Stay on top of it. Keep watching.